Well, I think I see how it all is coming together. I did not know what Rob was going to talk about, but I did hear that allusion to the roadmap. So it's very convenient that that question was asked because I will be talking about that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be talking about three things. I'll talk about what we've learned. I think I want to start with a little bit of that. I know you've heard a lot of stories this morning, but I want to share a couple more with you because I think what we do with you guys out there and others around the world is very interesting. I'd like to share a little bit of that. I'll talk about what we've done over the past year, make some announcements, and then I'll end with what we're doing going forward. So those are the three things: what we learned, what we did, and what we're going to be doing. All right? So the theme of this is bringing apps to life. I think that's a powerful metaphor, both literally and figuratively, right? There's, the concept that we're bringing apps to life in a more organic perspective, making the system have the characteristics of a living organism that you've heard us talk about. There's also the actual things that you guys do with the applications you develop, that you're actually impacting people's life on a day-to-day basis. So you're bringing your technology into their life, and I think it's a very apt way to phrase things. So a few examples of what we do that we've run into pretty recently. Think about when you swipe a ticket at a train station. Performance and reliability are two of the things that our customers tell us are some of the most important things we're able to deliver for them. And the faster we get you into that train station, on the train, and on your way, the better your quality of life and your quality of experience is going to be as you're trying to get where you're trying to get to. And for the train operator, that means they're able to deploy technologies in a more efficient way. They don't need to have as much infrastructure at the remote train stations, and they can consider new ways of providing travel services and travel experiences for folks. And so the technology that we deliver to speed things up and make things more efficiently gives folks more options to impact the daily lives of customers. On the self-driving side of things, we've seen some really interesting use cases where, in this space, it's all about training algorithms and getting experience and getting miles on the road. And so the faster these vehicles can get off the road, download their data or upload their data, have it processed, have it train the algorithms, and get back on the road with the newly trained information and run that through its paces, the faster they're able to get that technology out to consumers like ourselves. In the hospitality industry, speed and performance and reliability is important because they're focused on making sure that you feel like you're at home when you're on the road. And so making sure you have high quality, high performance access to the preferences, to the services you expect, super important for organizations like these, and a super important part of how they compete with each other. And then finally, in the transaction side of things, we all want to be able to access our money and our resources at our fingertips whenever we want to, and taking friction out of that process, and not just relying on traditional banking infrastructure, but giving folks new ways to consume and pay for the products and services they want is super important to these organizations. And again, another way that they're competing with each other, and the folks that give the best experiences are the ones that are winning. And all of these companies leverage NGINX, or these organizations leverage NGINX to be a big part of making that happen. But it's not all roses. They all have similar types of challenges they're dealing with. There's a variety of technologies that they need to be able to take advantage of and leverage in their organizations. Oftentimes, these organizations have been around for a while. They have monolithic or legacy or traditional applications that they continue to invest in, continue to maintain, and are very important to the way that they operate. And so we need to make sure that we take care of those. Oftentimes, they're investing in trying to modernize those applications, and they'll add third-party services or add other internal services to those applications in order to expand the capabilities. And we call those hybrid-type applications. And then there are a number of folks that are experimenting or actually putting microservices applications in production. And we need to be able to support those as well. And most organizations don't have the luxury of only having one type of application. They have to deal with all three of those types. And we're fortunate to get the results of our recent user survey. And it's about the results that we saw were about 60% of a given organization's applications tend to be monolithic in nature. About 20% of their applications tends to be hybrid, and a little bit more than 20%. So the numbers don't exactly add up, but it's 23 and 18 and like 58 or something like that. But about 60-20-20 with a little bit of an edge on the microservices side, and that's something that we're seeing continuing to grow year over year. Microservices are becoming much more of an adopted set of architectures for organizations. But they have to deal with this variety of technology, and that variety of technology relies on a variety of tools. Each of these types of applications, and even each of the applications, can have its own stack. It can have its own ecosystem of integrations that it needs in order to be able to be delivered successfully to the customers. And finally, all of that is driving what we see as a desire to evolve the teams that exist within organizations. No more, I'm the central team, and it takes me 2 months to be able to deploy the service that you want. And it's now, I need to be able to figure out how I can give the DevOps teams or the application teams the agility and the ability to release their capabilities and the cadence that they want to without getting in their way. And so we see these teams needed to come together and work in new ways. So these are the things that all of the different customers we talk to are dealing with. This is very common across organizations today. And despite all those challenges, we're still together able to bring apps to life. So we're able to overcome those challenges, but we think there's a lot of value in the things that we do to help streamline and make it even better. And so this is the platform. So this is where we start to get into the meat. I have a lot of information in here. An interesting part of my job is I have to actually know what everything on this slide actually means. So hopefully I'll get it all right. The folks in the audience here that work in the team will keep me honest later. So this is the platform that we talk about. So we have Nginx and Nginx Plus, Nginx Open Source and Nginx Plus, the data plane layer that you guys are all, I'm sure, familiar with. We have Unit, which also sits at the data plane layer, our application servers that's multilingual and network native. And then we have Nginx Controller, and Nginx Controller expresses itself through 2 core use cases today. There's the ADC, or load balancing use case, and there's also our API management solution. And we've been investigating and investing in R&D around service mesh opportunities. So that's kind of where we were pre-F5. But even after the F5 acquisition, we've delivered quite a bit so far. I'm not going to go through all of these because I want to get to the announcements and the roadmap. But whether it's security and authentication capabilities, new control capabilities, more flexibility to extend and program the solution in the ways that make sense for your applications, or letting the instances themselves share information with each other so that they can act as a unified front. We've been investing a large amount in making sure that we are able to be everywhere that we need to be, to the earlier point about being able to sense what's going on in the environment, but also implementing the controls and the tools that folks need to actually enforce and deliver the decisions, right? And so we've done a lot of work on the Nginx side, on the Ingress controller, across and up to R18, which was released a little bit earlier this year. On the Unit side, we've been focused on expanding the number of languages that it supports. It's up to 7 languages now. All right, I'll try to name them all. PHP, Perl, Ruby, Go, Python, Java, and JavaScript. Did I get them all? I think I got them all. But we've also added dynamic application routing, as well as more richness in the way that it's able to handle the type of traffic and the type of integrations that it needs to be able to handle as an application server with networking capability built in. Controller has had a big year. Prior to last year's conf, we released the first version of it with the ADC capabilities, but earlier this year, we released the very first version of our API management solution. That's a very exciting thing for us, given that again, I'll reference our latest user survey, 47% of customers are using us at least as an API gateway, which is a huge number. So having an API management solution to go along with that, we think is a really good opportunity to help streamline and facilitate folks' API economy engagement. But more tools to handle application configurations at scale, more and better workflows to handle multiple user environments. All of those are the types of things that we've continued to add to our controller solution over the past year. And then finally, we don't exist within a vacuum. It's not just important what we build within our solutions. It's also very important to us how we integrate with the environment around us. And so having strong ecosystem integrations and compatibility is super important to us, and it will continue to be important to us. We are not about being proprietary and locked in. We're all about making sure that we build the right integrations and the right hooks into the environments and the workflows that our customers require. And so building more efficient cloud solutions with folks like ARM and providing new options and new platform support capabilities for the major cloud providers, working more closely with authentication providers, providing better security and visibility integrations. All of those are things that we've invested in over the past year in the application platform that we call the NGINX application platform. But now we're part of F5. And we spent a good amount of time talking to customers in the market and trying to understand how people felt about this. And we did hear quite a bit of feedback. Much of it was positive, I'll have to say. I was very pleased to hear some of the good things. But there were also some concerns that folks voiced. And I wanted to share a little bit about what I've seen now as part of F5. I've been working with this team for coming up on about six or so months now, give or take. And so far, what we've seen, not just me, is an embrace of the use cases. So we talked about all the different things that NGINX can bring to a customer's environment. This is a Swiss Army knife kind of experience. And an embrace of the need for folks to be able to leverage this solution in very flexible ways to deliver their applications is something that's been embraced. There's also a strong openness to change. I don't think anybody that I've run into has felt like they're perfect. Everyone understands that there's new ways of doing things in both directions, not just F5, but also NGINX. We're not perfect either. So this real desire to figure out how to make the best of both situations and figure out how to make things work the best that they can is something I've definitely seen a lot of focus on. There's been the increased investment. That's something that was talked about earlier, as well as a desire to keep the vision, the leadership, and the principles in place as much as possible. Obviously, we want to make sure we continue to pay attention and adjust as time goes on, but having that same cast of characters, that same kind of context in place is very important to try to make sure we're doing the right things going forward. And also, importantly to us, is our partners have stuck with us. I've seen a few types of acquisitions, and folks start to get concerned about what this means for their relationship. But as I said, our customers expect choice. It's very important for them to be able to use our solution in the way that makes sense for them. And so having strong partnerships is super important to us because it's super important to our customers, and we think that's the right way for us to be building solutions together. So one comment that I heard from customers that was most interesting to me is, yeah, you can say things all day long. Don't just tell me. I'm going to believe it when you show me. You got to do what you say you're going to do. And so that's what I'm going to talk about next. This next section is going to be talking about what we're actually doing now as part of F5 to start to try to show you where we're going with this whole portfolio. So the first thing to note is the application platform is going to evolve. So this has always been our vision. We wanted to have a whole bunch of use cases expressed through controller, but as a smaller company, you have to focus on making sure you're getting the few things you can get right, absolutely right. And so that's what we were doing before expanding. And so we had application delivery, API management, and service mesh. So the first thing that we're doing is actually promoting analytics to a first-class capability within the portfolio. We recognize that folks really want to be able to understand what NGINX is doing for their application, how their application is working, and that's something that we're going to make front and center as part of this application platform. And so you'll see that actually start to happen. The other thing that we're doing is we're making room for some new modules. With the increased investment means we can now not only invest more in the things that we think are interesting, solutions like service mesh, but also take advantage of some of the new technologies that we didn't have direct access to before. F5 has some great security assets, and being able to apply them surgically depending on where you're instrumenting NGINX within your application is something that we think is a really good opportunity for both us and for folks like yourselves. And then along the top with controller, if you notice, the kind of key value proposition there shifted to self-service capabilities, making sure that folks are able to collaboratively work and get access to the services they need through this platform without getting in the way of them being able to develop and deliver their applications. That's super important. Automation is super important, and so is governance. So these are the characteristics of the controller platform that we're building to that are going to be really important for it as it starts to integrate more and more in the environments that you guys have. So what are the new capabilities that we're announcing? So there's a whole bunch of stuff, as I said on this slide. So let's go through it. So one thing to note is the advanced WAF from F5. So that's something I just heard in the previous section. So good, I'm glad that check, something that was asked for, is actually on the slide. This has been a pretty interesting one for us because there are a lot of cool technologies that can be brought to bear, and we're very excited to have the opportunity to bring the F5 advanced WAF capabilities onto the NGINX platform as a module so that folks can get access to some of the coolness that we think you'll benefit from. That's not to say that we're not going to continue to have the mod security option or any of our other module providers, but we think this is another interesting option for folks to be able to make their applications more secure. We're investing in more easy configuration and synchronization of the cluster intelligence within NGINX Plus, as well as more ecosystem solutions. Working with ARM to get cost savings and power savings as we run on their solutions. More intelligent API security capabilities with folks like Ping Identity, and the ability to load balance globally with partners like NS1. And there are a number of other partners that we're working with as well. There's Okta here this week. There's Gremlin here this week. And not only the partners that have technology, but also our systems integrator partners, folks that help provide services to help folks deploy and deliver their applications successfully, folks like SoftwareOne. And so we rely heavily on our partners to help expand and scale our ability to deliver applications with folks like yourselves. On the open source side, there's been a good amount of investment as well. HTTP3 support is something we've been working on for a while, and we're going to deliver the first versions of that soon, as well as enhancements to our ingress controller solution in Kubernetes, providing more self-service capabilities for folks to be able to leverage more of the capabilities in again, the way that they need to for their application, specific to their application. And then on the unit side, being able to proxy and load balance east-west traffic. I think Unit has a great opportunity to be the de facto standard way to handle east-west traffic for the applications that you have in a microservices environment. And we're very excited about that opportunity. Static file sharing, namespace isolation, there's a lot of goodness that we have coming on the Unit side of the things. On the controller side, there's a few things that I already talked about, which is kind of core to the platform. So things that will be horizontal across all of these. Things like being able to have self-service workflows and having a declarative API that allows you to integrate controller with your automation that you have within your environment are super important, and that's coming as part of this release. Seamless certificate management for the ADC use cases, a dev portal for our API management solution, so folks can have the ability to, again, get more self-service collaboration, discover, manage, publish the APIs that they're responsible for. Super important capabilities. And one thing that's new is I talked about promoting analytics to the first-class citizen status. Well, analytics is really all about, as I said, helping to understand what NGINX is doing for you and giving you the ability to track the key performance indicators that you care about. And so this release is going to allow folks to get that specific module to be able to get that level of visibility into their NGINX deployment. So we're very excited to now be able to bring that to market. So now, to come down the home stretch and talk a little bit about roadmap, these are the things that are coming a little bit further. So call it 4 months plus. So looking into early calendar year 2020 timeframe. So on the NGINX side, we're going to continue to invest in our advanced WAF capabilities. That's, again, important to us. Investing in the clustering capabilities, again, that ability for the instances to be aware of each other, to share information with each other, and to act with unified intent. Super important for high-scale, horizontal distributed applications. And encrypted JWT token support. We see a lot of folks using the JWT capabilities within NGINX, and adding the encryption layer or capability of that is something that we're going to be throwing in there. On the open source side, continue to invest in HTTP3. The JavaScript module that extends the capabilities of NGINX programmatically is something that we're going to continue to invest in, as well as Unit, getting more and more east-west capabilities, richer support for the existing languages, and the ability to actually collect and expose metrics, both through controller as well as to other solutions that want to be able to get that data. So there's a lot of goodness at the data plane perspective where, again, it's about sensing what's going on in the environment and having the controls and technologies available to be able to adapt or apply the intents. And then finally, on the controller side, a lot of goodness coming. Again, more capabilities being built into the core around self-service, the ability to auto-deploy and orchestrate instances. The modules themselves will continue to evolve. ADC will get the ability to handle more and more of the types of common workflows that folks require. API management is going to get more richness with the ability to translate between different formats and enforce varieties of quotas. The analytics module is going to get beyond reporting and do really more of the analytics type stuff, which is find something interesting and tell me about it. Don't just give me data. Very passionate about that type of thing. And of course, the new use cases that I talked about. The service mesh module, where we think we have an opportunity to do something new and unique that we'll talk more about over the coming days. And then security. Again, being able to have that central perspective on security, applying it in the right places for the application, depending on where you have NGINX instrumented in your infrastructure. So I want to give you guys a sneak peek of the types of things we're working on. There will be a lot more of this information coming out, more detail on a lot of this stuff over the next couple of days. And we're really excited to have you here. I want to wrap it up by basically saying, our goal here is to really address the types of technology challenges and make sure that we have solutions that work with the types of applications you have, that give you the ability to integrate cleanly with the tools that you have, or even potentially consolidate the tools that you have, and really seamlessly integrate with the workflows that your teams are trying to evolve towards as a combined organization between F5 and NGINX now. And with that, I'll thank you for your time, and I'll bring up my partner in crime, Mr. John Kuhn, VP of Product Management, to talk about how Controller is going to extend our vision of bringing apps to life.
Thank you, Sydney. It's great to be here. What are we going to talk about now? You've heard a lot about the roadmap, and you heard a lot about the detail that we've done over the past year and delivered to you, and some glimpse into what we're doing in the next 3 to 6 months on the roadmap. I'd like to connect that, the ideas around technology, tools, and teams, to how that's supersizing the vision. There's a lot of discussion that Gus and Kara had around the increased investment, and I want to show you materially how we think about the future and how a lot of that roadmap that you've seen is going to fit into that future vision. And the challenges that have been covered pretty well to this time can be, I think, really well articulated in what Equinix went through. A lot of that is, how do you ensure that you don't impede agility? How do you ensure that you're innovating at the speed at which you need to be competitive in the market? And how do you decrease risk as you push forward in the number of applications you're delivering? But there's a lot of impacts that materially change the way you can actually address those concerns. And I think, when I think about those challenges in talking to customers, a lot of it has to do with the communities that are involved. There's a community inside the enterprise IT organization that you have to work with to deliver an application. That may be multiple dev teams that are working in concert with one another. It's also the vast majority of tools and ecosystem that you're using to try to increase that innovation. But as you roll out more applications, there's an uphill battle. There's the infrastructure itself, which is not intelligent enough to be able to be left alone, to be able to stand on itself and help your app thrive. There's also sometimes a war, as people describe it, between security and innovation. Being able to move as fast as you want, but do so with the lowest amount of risk, is really an anathema to organizations. It's extremely difficult to get that balance right. And then finally, visibility is a key challenge. We work with a lot of customers who are using a hodgepodge of various solutions to try to get their app lifecycle in line across their applications. And so our vision for the future, in thinking about how do we organize across these key challenges, is to try to start with NGINX that is already in your environment and harnessing that to address the future world problems. And if we are to treat apps as living things, we have to materially be part of that living organism. And that is, from its birthplace, to help create apps in an efficient way, to help those apps adapt to their environment, to allow apps to auto-protect themselves at the speed at which you're increasing the number of versions that you have out on either a daily or weekly basis, and to achieve something greater around healing, to identify problems proactively and prevent those from actually impacting production, increasing availability. And how we intend to do that in our vision is number one, well, there's so many application frameworks and app stacks out there that are being in use within an enterprise across dev teams. Wouldn't it be great if, in the future, you have a very consistent set of both choice, consistency, and flexibility to give to your app developers? What do I mean by that? Allow the developers to develop in a wide variety of languages, because most applications, if you think about an application growing up over time, is oftentimes used by multiple teams using multiple languages to go develop that. And if you can unimpede that innovation, that's a fantastic value for that organization. The second is to consistently deliver it, consistent APIs to deliver the application framework, a consistent way of monitoring that application, a consistent way of deployment over that application, and something that can be rolled out corporate-wide. Now, once those applications are out there, the next challenge is that how do you help that application adapt to its environment and grow in a more automated way? Well, a lot of technologies that the infrastructure around auto scale out, in, up, or down, a lot of people don't use those. Sometimes they're unreliable. Oftentimes they introduce more risk. And ultimately, the customer experience suffers. So imagine if that data path was much more intelligent, that really made decisions based on the end-to-end performance of the application, in particular in hybrid applications where your application may be in multiple clouds and on-prem. That future world is a world that we're going towards, an intelligent way of understanding that end-to-end and making decisions for scaling up, down, out, and in without user intervention. Third is around the protection of the applications themselves. And for the last 15 years, we have seen an increase in the number of attacks and an increase in the attack sophistication. So thinking just 2 years out, do we think we'll get an increase in both of those? We will. The problem is, and all too often, we're talking to customers that really put a brick wall in between the SecOps teams and the rest of the organization, DevOps and app dev. But oftentimes it's artificial because we're using legacy tools to protect the applications. We believe strongly that there has to be a new model, a model that puts more of that onus on delivering security as part of the DevOps and app dev process. A solution that tightly integrates into your CI/CD and pipeline to be able to protect the app at the speed at which that app updates. And in some cases, that could be 100 times a day. And finally, we see a problem in the future around visibility. Yes, there's visibility issues today. Yes, you have lots of tools which are trying to give you that visibility. In the future, near real-time impact is going to be critically important to prevent outages. And we see the future as finding the exact microservice or even line of code in some cases that will be needed to be realized in order for you to find that problem before it happens. Now, this is the lofty vision for us. Again, connecting to that app as a living thing in creation, in deployment of the app, and adapting to that environment, in the protection, and able to heal. So we have to transform what we're doing. Part of that is what we saw from Sydney is the next 3 to 6 months. The big things that we're changing as part of our roadmap are here. Number one, the commitment that we have to automation in everything we do. We know that a lot of your lives out there is, look, let me decrease the amount of time I'm spending on infrastructure-related issues. So a commitment that we have across that roadmap and with every one of the development teams we're working with and through is in the spirit of automation. And that's a big cornerstone of what we're building with the future of our controller. Second is it does take a community. In order to develop efficient, innovative applications that solve market needs, You're going to need the impact of the entire organization, including the network team, the DevOps teams, the app dev, security operations. And ultimately, you need to think about your app lifecycle in bringing those teams together. So a lot of the use cases that we're developing in the future are helping to provide a single method for those teams to collaborate together. Third is that we want people to think about the services that sit on top of the data path to be much more policy-driven, which means that you develop a policy for traffic or security management. We think about how that policy should be implemented within the app architecture. So that all too often, depending on the app, whether that's bare metal, virtualized, or containerized, you have to think about how am I going to implement this security policy in a wide variety of different app architectures. That's a commitment that we're making now, is to build our roadmap so that we can translate those policies directly to whatever app architecture you're choosing. And then finally, Sydney has brought forth the concept of analytics being a cornerstone of our future vision. And that is absolutely true. We're building a much broader analytics play that both incorporates both on-prem and SaaS components to give you greater intelligence to solve some of those key problems around how you grow and shrink, dependent on that end-to-end visibility. How you build a much greater view of the vulnerabilities and exploits that are happening within your environment to more proactively deal with security threats as they happen. That vision comes together in Controller. And it's ultimately there to ensure that we can shorten that time between code to customer. The key elements of this is not only are we building out some incredibly in-depth technologies that solve traffic security and API management issues at the data plane, but we're connecting that to a larger vision around Controller that puts the various communities and teams in the driver's seat. A single controller that DevOps, NetOps, SecOps can collaborate on key policies around efficient traffic management, auto-scaling of the infrastructure, robust security, comprehensive security, an analytics solution that can help inform those capabilities, a broader set of API management, which is going to be one of the focused conversations that we're having with you here at the breakouts, and service mesh technologies. All the while, we're integrating that into the tool set and the pipelines that are important to you. You need to be able to consume these capabilities in however you consume them in building your automation. And that's API, CLI, and GUI. And finally, the ecosystem integrations have never been more important. We're making bigger investments into ensuring that we continue to more explicitly integrate with the vendors that you're using today. And that's part of what we want to engage with you on at this conference, is to ensure that we're capturing the way that you're developing applications and we're integrating into that ecosystem that you're a part of already. So we're excited about this vision around Controller. It is in market today. We're making a much bigger play in the future. And the commitment to that vision, the journey that we're on right now, is that we're building greater capabilities to integrate into the tool sets and that pipeline that you have in your environment. Coming out with a declarative API model for Controller that allows you to more easily automate data plane services. And we're also building the building blocks of making the lifecycle management of the NGINX data path much easier to implement and much more automated using analytics with scale out and scale in capabilities. On the team side of things, we're helping to reorient this platform to be very specific to the individual or team that's using it to develop the configuration, the monitoring, the security policies for that specific application, not just on an instance level. This allows a much greater capability to provide self-service out to teams. And then on the orchestrated security, this commitment is that we are creating security workflows that put the deployment of security in the hands of DevOps. SecOps is a key participant in this and can audit those capabilities. But we want to take it from having a security solution that exists in a separate building to security that's integrated as part of the data path, that is orchestrated along with controller, and has the capabilities of being able to update policy on a continual basis versus every month or every week. And then finally, we're bringing new capabilities to API management, which again, you'll hear about in some of the breakouts. But we're focused on collaboration with API management, which is in the future, having an enterprise can collaborate across all the APIs that are being developed across their applications, allowing for much better innovation within a company. So we're super excited about these set of capabilities that we're executing on now. And guess what? We want to continue the engagement that we have with all of you, people who have been with NGINX for years now. We want to broaden that engagement. We're taking some applicants to participate with us in giving more feedback, actually utilizing code that's not available yet to the market, and helping us develop that future vision. That's nginx.com/EAP to sign up and be an applicant. We're also looking at getting some feedback more immediately from you now on our roadmap priorities. So with that, we have nginx.com/engage. That is a survey that you can use here that give us some feedback on what we're focused on for the future. I'll end with this. This commitment that we have to bringing apps to life is real. And we're putting in a significant amount more investment in that. Build it to be part of the birthplace of applications and the growing of those applications, to helping those applications adapt to their ever-changing environment, the ability to align application protection directly into the CI/CD pipelines and help those applications protect themselves, and finally, taking a proactive stance to healing applications when availability suffers. I'm looking forward to the rest of this conference where we can discuss this roadmap and get into the more details about it. Thank you very much for your time.